Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chartwise Women with Erin Swenlin and Mary Ellen McGonagle. Welcome to our Thursday, October 29th show. Mary Ellen and I are here to educate, engage, and I think most importantly, empower you to take control of your investments. Welcome, Mary Ellen. Today is Throwback Thursday.
I like it. Yes. Today, I think we're going to go a little back in time here and sneak
Yep.
in some pictures. Okay.
Yeah, we thought it was only fair if it were Throwback Thursday, we should throw some photos up there. I'm on the left there, and my dad, Carl Swenlin, who many of you know, is, of course, holding me at the
I gotta
beach.
say, you
So
look awfully happy. I think it's that hat. That's a
I
pretty
think you're right.
style in there. Yes, and on the right, that is me on the right of the right photo, sitting with my twin sister. That we would have a photographer would come to the home. Uh, I was one of 6 children, and various poses and photos, and there you go.
Wow, I didn't know you
That's
had so many brothers and sisters.
yeah, twin brothers as well. So we had
Oh my goodness.
two sets of twins in our wacky house. But
Oh
yes,
my goodness, that is
oh yeah.
insane. I
Hmm.
can't even imagine. Your mother must be a saint for sure.
Oh yes, yes. She's still exhausted.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, so with Throwback Thursday, one of the things we were going to look at are companies that are, have stood the test of time. Of course, not all companies have stood the test of time. Can you remember when we had such companies as, these were all Dow 30 companies, of course, International Harvester, Bethlehem Steel, so many more. But
How
let's get
about
into our
toys?
wisdom of the week.
Okay, I was going to say Toys
I
R Us.
always do that. I'm so excited to get in. So for
Yes.
me, the wisdom of the week is the top one, and that is that many companies that have stood the test of time provide solid dividends and yields because they have been around so long, and so they do provide an excellent foundation for you. So I think it is important to go back and look at some of these companies that are still around.
Yeah. Absolutely. And my wisdom will tie right in there with that because I'm talking about companies, these long-standing, we'll be talking about companies that were incorporated over 100 years ago, and those that can pivot and really redirect their business as far as who do they appeal to and how they supply products is if you can align with these newer technologies and also really shift with consumer demands, these are the companies that can really retain their leadership through the decades. And I think you'll get a kick out of some of these companies that we're going to be looking at, but truly some long-standing companies have really uh, t- uh, done well through the times, through the ages, as far as that
Absolutely.
shift.
And that's part of being able to stand the test of time, isn't it? Is to be innovative.
Hmm.
Remember, so now we're going to go down memory lane. I got a little ahead of myself. There's your Woolworth building, right? So
Hmm.
you remember Woolworths, and how about International Harvester, Bethlehem Steel, Hudson Motors. This is one that I liked. Remington Typewriter was part of the Dow 30. And we have Victor Talking Machine Company, Studebaker. Of course, all of those are no longer around. Some of them make sense, typewriters and talking machines.
Oh boy.
So I don't know. It's been interesting following it, and even just in our lifetimes, in recent memory, there are certainly companies we could probably look back on. I think Sears is a good example of one that's pretty much on its last legs. I know there's a
Hmm.
holding company, but there are some in recent memory that are not, doing what they should or didn't, and so they're not there anymore. So,
Exactly. Yeah, they just didn't make that shift, and unfortunately, we're left behind. We're going to be covering
yes,
some of those
yes,
companies as well, and how you can use that chart to tell you that they're not making the leap, if you will.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, let's start off and look at some historical names that have been around And they may not have pivoted with their, technology, or they may not have really innovated that much over the years, but they have, as I said, stood the test of time. And obviously they are innovating in some ways, but not, not enough maybe to stick around later, or just they need to do more, I would say. And so let's look at some of those names. So let's start off with General Electric. I think this is a good example. This company obviously has been around for quite some time. And, one of the ways I would say that they've quote unquote innovated is really just changing all of the business segments that they've been involved in. From where they started to where they are now is quite different. But I don't know that it's enough. And obviously, we've seen over time with General Electric, it's had its ups and downs, if you
Oh,
will.
to say the least.
Yes, this is a monthly chart, so you can see, it's mostly a sideways trading range, but it's just had difficulties. We were already seeing problems back here in 2016, and of course back here in the right before the 2008 crisis, we saw that bear market come in then. And you can see, I mean, General Electric, while it's at the bottom of this trading range, is still one that I haven't been involved in. I just haven't been happy with looking at how it does. And then honestly, this stock has not been anywhere you want to be from 2016 on to now.
And one other thing I'd like to highlight here about GE is when you really look at that first parabolic or really excessive move, taking us from the late 80s and up into 90s, this is something that you'll see in these companies that have strong leadership. And this was during the period that Jack Welch was the CEO. He's been heralded as the greatest leader of his time, just an incredible manager. And you'll also see that same dynamic with companies such as Walmart that have been around during the time when Sam Walton was the CEO. His era, his time going back was also legendary. So when we have these corporations that have been around for a while, and you'll see these periods of outperformance, oftentimes it is during a period when there is a dynamic and very, very effective CEO at the helm. So that certainly was that period. And then after that '09 period, GE was heavily in financial space, and that was the driver for a good part of that decade. So they do need to have a certain driver. GE did rally over the last couple of weeks. It had to do with airline traffic potentially picking up, and they are involved in providing parts to airline manufacturers. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
All right. How about IBM? Big Blue.
Mm. Yes, it is blue. It's not happy.
Exactly. So this is just the daily chart of a recent look since that bear market low. I mean, obviously another one in a trading range. This kind of fits to me. They are in the technology space, but they certainly haven't performed like many of their brethren in that sector. Let's look at them on that long-term chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm going to do a throwback. I remember them. I remember that period during the 90s.
Yes.
We
And
can talk
again, there
about
we
it.
go, took off the PC business. I mean, they got very involved in that technology space.
Mm-hmm.
And, they continued on through out of '08 as they did start to, they are starting to innovate more, get involved in various, I believe they're doing cloud service now,
Mm-hmm.
among other things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're moving into that cloud business, financial cloud. And then, of course, the 90s, famous for that PC period. There was a company, Digital DEC, that did not make the leap into the
Oops.
following decade, but certainly that was a very robust period for a lot of these computer companies of the 90s.
Absolutely. Before that dot-com bubble, as we call it. All right, let's look at one more historic name that I was looking at earlier when I was going through my various uh, various stock symbols. And this one was sort of a late ad for me, but JM Smucker, that they've been around for quite some time. You can see that they are in that consumer staples area. So typically, again, you're going to see more of a sideways trading range with these staple stocks typically. But let's look at it over here on the monthly chart and see what we have here. So this one doesn't go back as far, at least as a stock. But my understanding is that I know they've been around forever.
Yeah, well, they actually were founded in 1897.
And
And
it took
they're,
them that long to start trading publicly. Who knew?
yep, yep.
Obviously, this one's doing pretty well out of the gate. It did, but now we are in this period. It's starting to act like a consumer staple, if you will, because we're starting to see, let's look at a weekly chart. I think that might be even better. But you can see this trading range that you typically are going to see with these consumer staple stocks.
Yeah, this one was one of the first names out of the gate after this recent bear market in March. When the markets turned, the stock did come to life. I had it on my MEM Edge suggested holdings list for a while until it deteriorated. But it was during that period it was revealed that in the US, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are the #1 sandwich in America. So a lot of people stuck at home sticking to their favorites. There was an awful lot interestingly during that period where people reverted back to their own childhoods and were looking and seeking comfort foods. Uh, but more recently, yeah, it seems to be wavering a bit. Doesn't quite have that trend.
Yeah, absolutely agree. No, it is very interesting. The one thing I have to say too, as we're discussing innovation, I mean, they really haven't done much in terms of changing their products, but they're a consumer staple, as it says. And like you were saying, I guess, certainly in the US, we do love our PB&J.
They also have a pet food product division that's doing quite well during this period.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go into a quick break and then we're going to come back and look at some of the companies that have really stayed relevant and have been pivoting to, meet the demands of the new society as it moves forward, as we go and change how we do our lives, the different parts of our reality. So we're going to look at some of the really old names that you'll recognize, but you'll also recognize the fact that they have managed to pivot, if you will, with the times. So we'll be right back after this break. All right, we are back from break, and today is Throwback Thursday. We've been looking at companies that have really stood the test of time. And the ones we did before our break were really the names that have hung around, but they haven't really had to change with the time so much to stay relevant. But now we're going to look at some companies that really have had to make the innovation in order to stay relevant because of the industries that they have been in or in. So I'm going to let you open it, Mary Ellen, with two
Of course.
names that I think most people recognize.
Oh, you bet. Yes, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you a well-known apparel manufacturer, and that is Gap. We're looking at a monthly price chart, and the ticker symbol is GPS. And I'm going to go ahead and make my screen a little bit larger because what I really want to highlight here is the companies during the 90s. Hopefully I can enlarge that a bit, but during the 90s, and we can get a feel for it here. Take a look at this big move up here. And this was during the 1990s. If you go back historically, look at the top performers for that decade. Gap was one of the top performers, and it had everything to do with their popularity of their products, their denim, of course, to the point where Sharon Stone wore a Gap T-shirt to the Oscars. That hit the headlines. That's how popular the company's products were. And then, of course, we can see this is very typical of consumer, where their tastes shift, they move elsewhere. More recently, the company has been trying to regain their glory years, if you will. They've appointed a new female CEO. This is on the monthly. Take a look at this move. I'm going to go ahead and revert to a weekly, share with you just really how interesting this stock has become as it's reversed out of this bear market. What they've done is reduced their product line. This more recent move is all about the company closing 300 of their stores. So they are pivoting, they are shifting to digital. That's going to be their focus. They're also hiring 150 new employees to help them expand that digital footprint. And the markets like it for the most part. It is in a confirmed uptrend. This is a weekly price chart, finding support at this upward trending 10-week or 50-day simple moving average. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Another name is a company that actually was, some people would not be aware of this, but it was incorporated in the early 1900s. This is Target, TGT. We all know that red looks like a, oh my gosh, with the bow and
Bullseye,
arrow.
right?
That's it, a target.
Yeah.
Why couldn't I think of that word? Anyway, let's take a look, because this is another company that more recently has pivoted to digital sales. They were on their way prior to this lockdown period, so they already were on their way to lift off. But this gap up here, huge earnings, they have really made the shift to digital, and also curbside pickup, and also shifting their product lines to meet current demands as far as what consumers are looking for. They've partnered with famous designers to bring out low-priced apparel wear lines. But let's take a look at the chart here, the stock. This is the 10-day simple moving average. It has pulled back a bit here more recently, but I like that it's finding support at this upward trending 50-day simple moving average. Now you're going to want to keep your eye on this RSI is negative. That's a momentum indicator. MACD also negative. So it's not quite ready for prime time. You're going to want to take a be on the lookout for this, where the MACD black line comes up through the red in line with a positive MACD, and then your uptrend begins.
Excellent. Yeah, I love Target. We talk about some of our favorite companies just because we enjoy them in our real lives, and we talk about investing in those types of investments just because sometimes when you're familiar with a company, Stitch Fix we talked about last week, similar situation. I like using them, so I wanted to follow their stock. But here's kind of another one in that vein, and this is Coke. And the interesting thing about Coke, I mean, Coca-Cola has been around for a long time.
Mhm.
I would be
1922 is when they came public. Oh no, I'm
19.
sorry, that's Kellogg. But it
Another
has,
good one.
you got it.
But interestingly, one of the things you'll note is that in the late 80s and into the 90s, this was really when there was a lot of competition with Pepsi, but they still managed to stay relevant. They still had a nice growth. You know, after that, we kind of flattened out. They tried a couple things that didn't work. But now we're starting to see out of '09, really just a nice straight up rising trend. Obviously got hit hard with that bear market, but already trying to come back to life. You know, they've gotten involved in not just their, you know, starship or flagship Coca-Cola, but they have been entering in some different areas. So I thought that one
Yeah,
was really interesting.
and they also,
Yeah.
oh yeah, in their recent release of their earnings, they are cutting back on their product lines in half, down from 400 to 200. So they're really trying to get refined. They're getting rid of products like coconut water and things that weren't really big sellers. So
Right.
that should
The
help them.
Right, more trendy type of things. But you can see this is the daily chart for Coke, and we have, you know, really nice dividend and yield here. So for those buy and hold or long-term investors, you know, this one has really been mostly a winner for them.
Yeah.
All right, let's see another one. You know, we should talk car companies, I
Oh,
think.
pardon me. I was also going to point out
Oh,
that yield on KO, and we can go that as we go through. A lot of these older stalwart type corporations do have offer a nice yield. Sorry, didn't mean to
Oh, yeah,
suddenly point that out.
absolutely. One of the good reasons to look back on these, right?
Hmm.
So let's see. The next one, like I said, I think we should talk car companies. You know, Tesla came out, and I think they really spurred some growth in the electric vehicle market. For some of these other companies like Ford, that's, you know, that you have to stay relevant, right? That's what we've been talking about. And now we're starting to see some of the older names, if you will, getting more involved in that electric vehicle market. And I think that's what's really going to help them pushing forward in the future. Like I said, here's Ford. We can look at it on that longer term 40-year
Yes,
chart.
the old horseless carriage. Mm,
Exactly.
yep.
So here you are. You know, right now it's been in this decline. And like I said, I think it's that lack of innovation. They really hadn't, you know, moved forward on some of this stuff. And as they've started to put more emphasis on that, you can see coming out of this bear market low, it looks like we're going to maybe even get out of the declining trend that we've seen.
Yeah,
Um,
they're seeing a lot of growth over in China, and actually next month they are going to be releasing an electric, oh my gosh, a truck. So they are
yes.
really embracing. Actually, it's a commercial van, and it's going to be battery and electric based. So
It's really interesting that we don't have as much data here as I would expect on some of these. And here's GM, and I think, you know, they're getting ready to introduce the new electric Hummer. Have you heard
mm,
that?
I did hear that. Yes. So
So
that's going to be a lot more appealing because when that Hummer was popular in the 90s, it was a gas guzzler during a low priced gas period. So to have that electric element could make it come back with a roar. No need
absolutely.
to worry about $4 gallon of gas.
And you can see coming out of that bear market low, we've had a really nice rising trend on GM. So I think that's an interesting area. And of course, I've talked about Fiat Chrysler. This has been one of my diamonds and diamond of the week. You know, we've got that pullback, but the 50-day EMA is holding right now. You can
Mm,
see the momentum is not doing what we want it to. Absolutely
mhm.
not. But we had that gap down, and it's not a big surprise there. But this one could be one you'd watch to see if it can hold on to that 50-day EMA, maybe get us a bounce and start back up. But I think that that's certainly an area that is good. And then I think we should look at one more, and that would be AT&T. There we go. Let's make this one big, 40 years. Let's see how much data we have back on this one. There we go, back to the 80s at least. So this, obviously, this one is, AT&T is quite old. I'm sure if we looked that up on our symbol summary, we'd find a very early date. But I think I saw them in the Dow 30 back in the 20s when I was looking at the history of some of these companies. But you can see, having moved into, you know, we came out, we're doing okay here in the 80s and 90s. We had the big bear market low, but since then it really has been on an uptrend. And, you know, obviously had a big boost. It's getting boosts from, you know, that industry. Now we have 5G coming out, but they've stayed rather relevant, I have to say.
Mhm. Yeah, they had a big period during the 80s when they were mandated to spin off. They were considered too powerful in the space, and so they did a big reorganization during that period. But yeah.
And there we go. So
Hmm.
I'd say, yeah, that was one as well. And if we look at that on a daily chart, let's see what we have going on with it right now. It does look like it's hitting a low here. It certainly could go lower. We've seen that back here in March. And it is trying to make a move to the upside. Maybe we might see a little double bottom here. But currently, you know, the RSI is negative and our momentum is pointed down. So probably not the best time to get involved in AT&T, although check that yield.
Mm, yeah, nice 8% almost there.
Yeah,
But a
that's,
lot of these telecoms are suffering during this period right now. So
yep. So something, another old company to consider. All right,
yeah.
well, I think it's that time
Oh
for,
yes, this is where we have found a very highly unusual headline, but it ties in quite beautifully. And this is our segment called Yeah, That Happened. And this announcement just came this week. I wish we could grace you with a photo, but Elton John gets his own Barbie doll. How about that? So it'll be very interesting to see how much play that gets going into the holiday season. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly here, and of course, take you to that company that is giving us that lovely Elton John Barbie doll. This is Mattel. And take a look here because this is certainly prior to that news. We can see this gap up here on Mattel. In 1948 is when this company came public. Huge volume here, all about earnings. And what they are seeing is that Barbie has come back. There is a resurgence in her popularity, and that was a big driver for this gap up here. The stock is basing quite nicely. I'd be on the lookout for a continued uptrend after a more pronounced consolidation period, but this volume is really, really telling. Institutions went in, and Mattel is being also this year the holiday season is starting early. This is something that's being
Mhm.
confirmed by some of the credit card companies and the delivery service providers as well. One other name that we can look at that's in this same space is Hasbro, also a toy manufacturer. And unfortunately, they did not come out with as strong earnings. The stock rallied going into their earnings because of Mattel. People were looking for similar growth characteristics, and they did not come through. So the stock pulled back here. It's finding support at this upward trending 50-day simple moving average. Big volume on this downside here. So certainly nowhere near as compelling as Mattel. I think we have time for maybe.
Yes. I do want to talk about seasonality a little bit on these two stocks, if you don't mind. I'm going to just grab that
Go
screen
right
really
ahead.
quick
Hmm.
because, obviously you were talking about trends with Christmas coming early, if you will. You'll notice that in November, both of these companies tend to do very well. Mattel especially, this is over the last 20 years. It tells you the seasonality. How often do you usually get a big gain? Interestingly, for Mattel, December is not a good month. See, over the last 5 years, even in the last 20 years, it's not your best month. But clearly, November for Mattel is very strong. So I have to say that if we're going that direction, that's of the two companies I like.
Right. And as I said, they are suggesting that one of the credit card CEO said that October is the new December.
All right. Well, there you
So we'll
go.
see.
Looks like it's been trending that way. You have one more name, I think, but we're just about ready to wrap it up. Of those companies we were looking at today, are any of those your favorite?
Actually, Gap and Mattel are the two that I would favor at this point in time. And certainly can't look the other way for some of these car manufacturers with car sales hitting uh, record highs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to say, I also like Coke. I think that that's a pretty good company. Stand by. It stood the test of time. All right. Well, that pretty much completes our show. We want to thank you for being here and have a great rest of your weekend and trading week. Happy trading.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.